It's alright, I know, baby, I get around. You and I got something they can't know about. Really, only heaven knows my heart. You know this ain't an ordinary love. We got so much history and stories about us. So come on over, baby. We gon' light some candles tonight. Very special. We gon' do whatever you like. Very special. Got some hidden chillin' all night. Very special. Hope you make the rest of my life. Very special. Very special. All night. Won't you bet it's a little cold on your shoulder? Mama said I would understand when I'm older. In my head, even if you tell me it's over, I'll pretend you told me I'm your own. Cause you know this ain't an ordinary love. We got so much history in the stories about us. So come on over, baby. We gon' light some candles tonight. Very special. We gon' do whatever you like. Very special. Got your kitty chillin' all night. Very special. Hope you make the rest of my life. Very special. Very special. All night. I'm supposed to be with you, that's what everybody gon' tell me. I can't really count on what everybody gon' tell me. She ain't seen a baby in a couple days. And I'm looking at my baby right up in his face. Flowers and gifts, restaurants. I swear he buy me anything I want. That's why I'm so quick to put that music on for innocent too, baby. We like to kiss whatever you like, very special. Some hidden shit no nice for your baby. I hope you make the rest of my life. Very special. Very special. Very special. All night, we drinking, we partying,
Oh, right, wow. Right, so we are. Oh, look, I think Leanne. Yeah, Leanne, you coming back before the music's finished.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm back. Technical difficulties. Everything went Pete Tong in that exact second.
Listen,
everything.
I love that K Michelle song. Very special. It's like one of my favorite tunes. I love that song. So welcome. Thank you both for joining me in the hot seat. I'm just going to zoom in my camera a little piece. So, not too oh. You can't see my fabulous jumper. I just want to show you this jumper that I have on. Look at this jumper.
Nice.
Yes.
Do you like that?
I do.
Like that. All right. So before I launch into why we're doing this, I thought I would just let the two of you introduce yourselves. Nobody needs to hear from me about who I am. So I thought, Kit, you're brand new. So I'm going to remove myself from the screen for a minute so everybody can see you both in your glory while you just, introduce yourselves.
Shall I go first?
Yes, you go first, Kit.
So Kit, I run a business called Mindweaver, which is focused on diversity, anti-racism, equality in technology predominantly, but really anything that's really geared around diversity and anti-racism. That's my jam.
Yes, sister. Yes, sister. So I will do another intro to match your intro. I'm Leanne Mair. For those of you who don't know me, I run LM Consulting, which is focused on partnering with companies to build a robust pipeline for Black women. So like Kit, it's anti-racism, it's gender equality, and it's all about business. So Shireen, there we go.
Right. So what? Hold on. Where have you got? Oh, look at me taking up the whole screen.
Did I miss off?
We're like, okay, she's like, that is girls. She's
Yeah,
like,
I was like, bye,
guys.
So listen. No, it's my daughter. 1 second.
I feel good. Can you hear me, Kit?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Yes, yeah. I know we're gonna carry on talking. She said, just carry on. No, I'm really happy for us to be getting into this, because when I saw Shireen's message this morning, I was just vexed. I was vexed. I was frustrated. And you know that feeling of, when I say heartbreak, I don't mean it in the exaggerated way, but it's that heartbreaking situation of going, how many times are we going to be here? How many times are we going to have to, when I say retread this same ground, I just mean as in we have to deal with it again and again and again in all these different shapes and forms. And when Shireen said, let's talk about it, I was like, yes, let's talk about it, because we have to say something. It's not enough for us to just talk about it, the three of us. We got to do more. So how are you feeling this morning, Kit?
Do you know, I think I was angry but not surprised, and that's a really annoying place to be, because it's like, this is so frustrating. This happens all the time, but at the same time, I was expecting something like that to happen. So I was annoyed by the inevitability of the whole thing.
Right.
And it's because it's frustrating. You know, you think, okay, did I expect anything really to happen? No, but I'm livid. And then then Shireen popped up with her standardly timely angriness, but actually, but it's legitimate, right? It's just like, it's actually somewhere, and then she puts it out there, and I'm just like, yes, that's exactly it.
Right, so my daughter's finished cooking chicken katsu curry, which is what set the alarm off. I was like,
She's like, oh yeah.
And the worst thing is, I'm waving to my. Don't worry, I'm going to come back. So everyone's like, what we're talking about. Don't worry, I'm going to come back. We're going to come back to this. Right, so we're going to come back. But just to say, I'm waving to my partner, going, can you? And he's like making sure he's not in the camera. You know. Right. Anyway, so
this is like real life. This is real life as it happens.
We're just going to do. Let me just do a little bit of a rewind for those who've just seen us pop up and thought she's just going to talk. She's just talking to herself today. So I read last night and then a couple more, because you know the time difference in the state. So the Amy Cooper Central Park lady. So you remember, this is the white lady walking her dog when she had no business walking her dog in the part of Central Park she was. The black guy, Christian Cooper, came and basically told her about her business. She called the police and basically was like, you know, a black African-American man is here to, you know, and I'm feeling threatened, and basically lying. It just so happened it was caught on video. So we know that was that before or after George Floyd was killed? I think it was just after.
After.
So
just after,
right. So I have paid very close attention to what was going on with her, or the lack of, only because that was probably the trigger for me that caused me to speak out. And then here I am disturbing the peace every day. So I saw this article, and I just thought to myself, a bit like what you said, Kit, a bit like Leanne, I'm like, here we go, right? Here we go. So there's things that we're going to deconstruct with this issue, and I just wanted to use it as to shine a spotlight on what happens in organizations, because there are so many parallels. This is the thing. So I posted, and there were so many things that I wanted to say, but you know when you don't know what to say, like, because there's so many layers to this, I thought I'm just gonna, you know, post, not thinking that there's gonna be like arguments and anarchy in the comments, as there always is. My poor friend Chris is like being crucified in the comment section of the original. Everyone's jumped on poor Chris. Hi, Chris. I feel like I need to just give you a shout out this for being brave enough to comment, and then like everyone's coming.
It was well articulated as well.
He's fine. He's a grown man. He can cope. But I did, because there's a couple of things that I wanted to reference in terms of this. So we're not, look, we there's a lot of things that we don't know, but I'm just going to say this. Within the workplace, we are still struggling, right, to get over intent versus impact. We still cannot have the conversations about how power, rank, and privilege, okay, which is an extension of white supremacy and racist ideology in terms of pecking order due to the color of people's skin, and how it impacts on the treatment of people with melanin in their skin when they raise issues about how they've been treated or how they feel they've been treated. Now, before we get into it, I just want to say a few things, because, you know, before anyone starts coming to try and pick apart our conversation, in my post, when I mentioned I was doing this live, I said my hypothetical situation, which ain't that hypothetical because it happens every day in organizations. But if a white colleague is accused of being racist, right, and then off I went, you know, all these factors. Yes, there are other individuals that can exhibit racist behavior. But when you remember that racism is a power structure, that is about white people being at the top of the racial hierarchy, not that there is one, but there is one for this purpose, and everybody else being underneath. Correct. I specifically mentioned white colleagues because we have to deconstruct this issue of whiteness and privilege that the color of your skin when you are white affords you, both within the workplace and within society. So we've seen it play out with Amy Cooper. Right. We all know. And for everybody who's going, well, you know, which is what Chris was saying, she's lost her job, you know, she's had this up and she's been vilified. Listen, let's just be crystal clear on this. If the shoe was on the other foot, or role reversal, right? And this was a black person, black woman or black man, let me tell you, their behinds would be so quick in jail, we would never see them. We would never see them. And they also would not be allowed to get away with 5 hours of therapy. Right. Like, so that's just my, so I'm gonna, you know, because I can go on, but that is, this is why
like everyone's chomping at the bit.
So this is why I wanted to have this conversation, because before, you know, and listen, there's going to be loads of people coming. It's like, oh, it's outrageous, it's unfair. It's all of those things. It is all of those things. But remember our focus, right, on improving the experiences of Black colleagues, global majority people within the workplace. And I don't want people seeing this Amy Cooper thing and thinking there's a disconnect. Oh, it happens out there. It doesn't happen in our, well, yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. So this is what we're gonna talk about. So I'm gonna hand over to you, fabulous ladies, because you know when I get in my feelings, I was like so vexed.
I know.
I was so vexed. I was like, I've got to talk about this. I've got to talk.
The thing that irritated me about it is that it's not about the situation with Amy Cooper per se, whether she was, you know, talking, you know, whether it was about the dog in the park or whatever. It was actually about the fact that the Amy Coopers of this world are graded on a different curve, and the system maintains that. And so if we're going to talk about what organizations need to do, it's about breaking down the system that means that the process that exists is not actually the same. We're not going through the same process because Amy Cooper, as we characterize her as now, she's afforded the 5 hours of therapy. That's not part
5 hours of therapy.
Part of my disciplinary process. We're not in the same stratosphere when we talk about how does this system work for you and how does it work for me. That's where the outrage comes. It's not just about the incident of racism. It's the fact that you are dealt with differently to me, and the system is built to maintain that.
Right.
You know?
For me, to your point, Kit, for me, it's also that part about the privilege of standing in her shoes is you can still lie, potentially do someone real damage as happens. So, you know, the person who raised the issue, as a Black person, you say somebody's being racist towards you. All of a sudden, you go from victim to being aggressor and you then get treated in a way that's disciplinarian, and the Amy Cooper character, like you says, gets coddled and she gets to apologize while you're there thinking, but hold on 1 second, hold on. These weaponized tears that you've used against me now means that we are no longer dealing with my issue, but we've actually turned it to make it about you. And I'm still there sitting here. I just gave myself goosebumps, sitting here vexed, swallowing all of this down because I've already been told I'm aggressive. I'm swallowing this down because I've already been told I'm out of line, when in the first place, it's you who was the problem. There is the difference right there. And that is what people aren't understanding. We knew Amy Cooper was going to get away with it because every single time as Black people, we bring up an issue, we become aggressors.
Yeah.
And how do they deal with aggressors? Discipline. And what kind of discipline is that? Penalization. Well, do you know what? I think Joanne Paulson said in the comments, well, if you don't like it, you know where to go.
Right. So can I just give another layer, because before we start really getting into this, the other layer of this is, and this is what I always say to chief people officers, I say this to boards all the time, is when you have these issues in your organization, because you are not cognizant of what it means to be living while Black, right? Because you're not cognizant of the multitude of not microaggressions, the racial abuse that people get on a day basis, whether or not they acknowledge it or not, it happens. It's part and parcel of our experience. When you're taking these issues, you're looking at it in isolation. So you're going, oh, John, the sales director, he didn't mean it when he called you, whatever it is. I'm just using that as an example. He didn't mean it. And then what happens is John goes, oh my goodness, it must have been my unconscious bias because you spent 5 years teaching people about unconscious bias, right? So that's what happens. Yeah.
Oh, the shame.
Right. So your business has spent 5 years doing compulsory unconscious bias training. So John now goes, well, I don't know, it's unconscious. I didn't realize. I didn't know this. Right. So John apologizes. Let's imagine it's Jane. And I know I'm going to be very generalized, but I'm trying to prove a point here so people understand, because this, I promise you, this plays out. So John apologizes, going, I didn't realize, unconscious bias, I didn't mean it. So-and-so's too sensitive, right? They're too sensitive. They've taken out, can't they take a joke? So we get John over here doing this. Then we get Jane, who then starts bawling. Oh, I didn't mean it. I didn't really, I apologize. He starts bawling, right? So what happens is that the business, meaning the HR person or the director or whatever, rushes to console Jane. Oh, don't worry about it. We know you didn't mean it. When you donated £200 for Macmillan, that's like, so we're getting into all of that, right? About how reaffirming how fabulous she is, because it happens, right? Then for John gets told off. You better fix up. If you're lucky, he gets told off. With all of this attention, easing of comfort or easing of discomfort of these two white individuals, and I'm making them caricatures to prove a point, is the Black colleague who is the one who has been impacted. We're not going to get into whether it's proven or not. Let's just assume, for the purpose of the picture I'm painting, they're impacted and they're sat right here. So then the HR person comes to them and says, oh, John's apologized. He didn't mean it, unconscious bias. So we're going to stick him on another 2-hour coaching session with this unconscious bias training coach that we got on retainer, right? Then Jane comes, oh, I didn't mean it. I'm really sorry. I've just found it, and then she starts telling stories of how she's got Black friends, Black neighbors, blah, 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 blah. Where she grew up, next door neighbor was Black and they had a great time, right? So we start getting into that, centering themselves. And this Black colleague, because of all of that, is expected to build a bridge and get over it. Right. And what people don't understand is, going back to this power piece, we do not have the power as global majority people within organizations because we're minoritized. And if you're the only Black person or one of the few melanated individuals, the balance of power is always against you, because fundamentally nobody is ever going to take your side. The system is not set up
for us to win.
You to be right. So that's why we're treated as the aggressor, because it's easier to point out our differences Kit, it's how you view the world. Are you sure it's not the way you see it? Are you sure you went, are you sure, Leanne, are you sure you're not, just take a moment to reflect. But that's only because it's us, because we have to have a double burden of proof for somebody to take those issues seriously. So the reason why I'm going to town on this is to explain the context, because I tell you, HR people still don't get this. Never mind anybody else. They still don't get this. So when you're dealing with these issues, they're thinking this is a one-time issue. What they're not realizing is the compound effect of racial trauma. They're not realizing that.
But there's also something around, like, how far do they really want to go in terms of acknowledging that this is a systemic problem? So it's easier to isolate it and say John, Jane, what have you. But as soon as they start saying, right, actually, we've gone through this process and it's shown us these things, all of a sudden, Shireen, Leanne, you can start to expect a different result from your process. At the moment, we've all said it, none of us expected any other outcome.
No.
But as soon as they start to really unpack their process, their policy, then all of a sudden I can start to expect it. Then they do have to start to acknowledge that if it's not happening, there's a systemic thing here. That's the bit that they don't, that is challenging.
Yeah.
It is for HR to actually have to do. It's easier to isolate it. It's easier to make it about Amy, John, Sarah, whoever.
Right.
And say, but this is the way the system was built. And we're actually all okay with that, because a lot of the response that was kind of similar to your man Chris's there, although I know he was only playing devil's advocate, was about saying, but there is a process here and we went through a process, and that is true, but the process only works for you, it doesn't work for me.
Right.
And before you come, I just wanted, because somebody made, look, these comments are coming in so fast, right? Kay Deneen, wherever you've gone. So Kay Deneen made a really good point. And I just want to emphasize, this is where has she gone? Right, here we go. I'm assuming it's a lady, but apologies if I've got your pronouns incorrectly. Right, oh yes, I can see Kay. Hi to Kay. Right, so what about if you are that lone, enlightened individual
the only one?
Again, because this does happen in organizations. This is why, and HR is caught between a rock and a hard place by definition of our profession. So we know that. That's always been the case. It's nothing new. But Kit, going back to what you were saying, and Leanne, what you were saying is, when you understand the dynamics of power, rank, and privilege, and remember, we're looking at this now with more awareness and knowledge about racist ideology, about white supremacy. So my argument with the work that I do and all of the ways I'm pushing everybody's buttons every single day, people just waiting for me to have a day off. They're waiting for me to have a day off. But the reason why I do this is because we have to dismantle all of this, because therefore it does not matter how good you are as a HR person. Right? It does not matter whether or not you've got somebody bang to rights, as we used to lovely say that in the corporate space. I love that. Bang to rights. Have we got them bang to rights? It doesn't matter if the person is down bang to rights. Because of the emotiveness, because of the lack of wanting to go into the detail with race and racism, this will always play out if we don't recognize the structural elements, the systemic elements, the institutional elements when we're talking about other stuff. The interesting thing with the Amy Coomer piece is that you've got institutional racism, because we have a legal system that was built to treat us unfairly, which is replicated within an organizational system that doesn't have the criminal system, but balance of probability, which is what you have to make your decisions on, right? When you're trying to deal with a disciplinary or a grievance, is loosely based on employment law, which is based on our legal system. So you cannot strip out those things. So, right, I'll let you talk, Leanne, but I just wanted to make that point, because it's not just about individuals. You've got to look at the system and the environment with underneath it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I was just going to say to both of your points, the first one being, what people sometimes forget is that being Black is something we can't take off. So everything that we feel within the workplace is already a knock-on effect to how we're already validated or invalidated outside of the workplace. And to your other point, Kit, just saying, it's too much effort. It feels like it's too much effort to go into all of that, because, what people also forget is that as Black people, the first thing that we have to deal with, is stereotype threat. but B, it's also this question of our credibility. So when we then come into discussing racist issues, the first thing that they go to is our credibility, and credibility is then linked to our ability to do our jobs, because this is the toss up we always have. You know, somebody who is in the dominant culture can go out of work, get drunk, vomit, and still be viewed as a great person. As a Black person now,
wait,
we can
Leanne,
go
give me
in.
a minute. Give me a minute. Did you step into my experience? Did you step into my experience? Did you step
I didn't even know.
I got to just tell you this quick story because I know you're going to think I'm lying, right? This is a long
No,
time
I don't. Okay, hold on.
I had one senior director ask me how this one scene, this is years ago, so ain't nobody going to remember. So they're listening to this story nodding their head like it ain't them, right? I had one senior director who got drunk at a Christmas party, right? Between doing whatever it is with the ladies and accounts, plural, ended up, because we went on a away day, you know, when you go somewhere else, ended up stark naked and then went out to sea and was stranded on a bloody rock, right? No, I kid you. I swear I'm not lying. I know you think I'm lying. I swear I'm not lying.
I know.
Come tell me now how this person just got a belie.
Right.
There was so many things that we could have, you know. There's another angle to this, is what happens when the perpetrators are very senior individuals. We can talk about that later on, because that's you know, and I've got answers to that one as well, but that's another different piece. But you're absolutely right, where people can get away with all sorts. That we as Black people, we can't even listen to one of Rihanna's slightly explicit songs without being called in the next day going, did that drop it down low that you did at the Christmas party, was that really appropriate?
Right. And the same time,
I mean?
when the same time big people are kissing up and one's married and everyone's like, oh yeah, they're just having fun, it's Christmas. And it's like, but this is the point, you know, and this is what people don't understand. You're thinking to yourself, somebody can go get drunk, vomit up, do all this stuff while his wife's at home and pregnant, and you're bringing a serious you just think
that you've been extra because you know I'm extra now, because I'm just like looking at all of the relationships of this. It's true.
Listen, okay, I will share a little story. I remember there used to be a guy, and every time his wife was pregnant and there was a party, guaranteed he would be calling me, whispering sweet nothings in my ear how much he likes me. So imagine, right? So I go to HR and I basically say to them, you know what? He's a nice guy and all that kind of stuff, but can you just have a word with him to what is like professional protocol? Because I don't need him on my phone. Leanne, you know what? But maybe you're encouraging him. And this is the point.
Victim blaming.
Right. You're young, because at the time I was young, so I've not worked in that many places, so I better be careful. But you know, you're young, you're this, you're that. But this is the point. When we bring serious issues, our reputation is all of a sudden the one that's called into question. And then you have to sit there and you go, but hold on, this is really pressing on me. This is so unfair. This person is so out of order. But what do I do? Because if I say something, this guy's going to carry on. If I say something, he's going to be emboldened to carry on, because I've just basically been told to put up or shut up. And that juncture right there is where we have to break that crux and say, whoever you are talking to, be it someone who is a HR manager, CHRO, whatever, you guys have to take responsibility and put the work in so that I don't have to stand here with this counterbalance.
Absolutely. And the thing is, when you say that, what do we do? Like, one of the things that I used to do, and my best friend Sophie used to tell me off for this, when I'm looking at intent and impact, I'd always defend the intent. Oh, but you know what? They probably didn't mean that.
Me too. Like, listen, you ain't listen. Me too. Me too.
Because actually, it became easier to do that, because otherwise, if I would have to challenge the impact on my own.
Because you've got to quantify. The challenge is you've got to quantify impact.
Yes.
How can you quantify impact when you can't? It's not a tangible something. So what happens is we default to intent. But what's really interesting is we only focus on intent for people who do not look like us.
Correct.
When us, the impact is so deep and so graved into marble, right? Do you know what I mean? You're a bit like, how can this one young IT guy have done all of these things that you've told me, and you got proof, and you got this ready to go in 24 hours? How did that happen?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm using it as an example.
Yeah.
So the lengths to which they will go to, then you have the other dynamic of that, which is, you see, this is what happens when we start bringing in too many Black people.
Yeah.
But you know what, Shireen, that part about the length to which they go to is that part for me about, once again, trying to undermine our credibility and that there's even a problem. They would rather spend 5 hours, 25 hours searching for reasons why your complaint is wrong than for 2 seconds considering the possibility that what you're saying was right. A man can, when I say a man, I'm just meaning like a person, a person can manage money, a person can buy bonds, stock, shares based on a gut feeling. And that is a decision-making process. But I can tell you, based on my feeling of living in this Black body for 36 years, I can tell you that someone's being racist, yet still I need to prove it.
And I think the thing is, so we're going to get, this is where we're starting to get into it now. So we've contexted the extent of the issue. We've given some
contexted it to here.
These stories, I think I don't know who it was, that somebody said they've also been told off for dancing at the Christmas party. Because listen, what people don't understand, before I move on, because this is quite funny, what people don't understand is, if you're the one Black person in a company, and I've been there enough times, right? Or you're the one melanated individual, Christmas party is dry biscuit, because in the UK, we get that, come on, Eileen. What do we get? Come on, Eileen. Yeah. Oh, you know them ones, kids laughing because she knows them ones, right? And everyone's so excited. And then they're going, oh,
what's that one from George Michael? From Wham. There's one.
Yeah. We get all of that. Don't say, it's not that we don't know the words, because clearly we're British, so we all know their words. But we're there whispering up to the DJ going, listen, have you got any, you know the one, you know it.
Shireen, you beg for Montel Jordan, this is how we do it. Yeah, you're
going to pay a little R&B just for 5 minutes.
Later. We'll work it in a bit later.
And I'm going, it doesn't even need to be anything we don't need no dancehall, no bashment.
Listen, just Montel Jordan, this is how we do it. Or a bit of salt and pepper. You don't care.
No, listen, do you remember Here Comes the Hot Stepper?
Here Comes the Hot Stepper.
So when that one song comes on, right, we are so relieved to have a hint of our culture. I'm not saying that song is representative, but it's something that we're there like bogling. Out of relief. That one
relief. Yeah, but Shireen, everyone turns into every Black person turns into an artist, because even if you don't know the lyrics, your mouth is moving. Murder, your face is serious, and you're there, and everyone's scared now because you're like serious. And then you get, I didn't know you could dance like that. I didn't know you could move like that. Wow, you're a mover. It's in your genes, isn't it?
I just had to say that, because we all know we're alluding to it, but I just had to break it down, because some people are thinking, what are they talking about with this? What's dancing got to do with it? This is part and parcel when you're the only one within an organization. We got to take the hint of anything.
Listen, at this point, you're grabbing onto Craig David 7 days like it was the best thing since sliced bread.
Anything bad said about Craig David, I'm just going to put that out there.
When Craig David's playing, what's that song? Walking away, unnecessary. I'm doing the bottom because I'm walking away.
All the shadows in my life, and then
unnecessary, because it's one song.
Yeah, but the thing is, as soon as the bass hits, all of these white middle-aged senior managers are sniffing around your backside. So you have to find a wall quick, and your wall becomes a partner that you wind up your butt on. Because listen, I learned that the hard way. That's all I'm going to say.
Anyway, we're moving it on, because I'm catching too much.
I was wearing out the walls back then. No time.
Lord, it's true though. Listen, we've got so many people. Look at everyone is coming. Everyone is coming with the truth.
But listen, thank God for that generation. Right. Thank God that we weren't having the video phones back then, really, because you know what? We would have all got fired for dancing and jigging it up. I'm crying.
Oh, God. Right. Anyway, so I'm keeping this moving because we could be here all day, but this is why it's important. You know what? We have to context these things because people are thinking, what's this got to do with the price of goods? The whole Christmas party is a big deal if you're the only Black person in a business. Trust and believe, it's a big deal, right?
No, but then when there's two of you, it's world war, because as soon as you find each other, like you might ignore each other in the hallway, but someone said something about Shaggy, it wasn't me, and then you're like, yeah. Should we go together?
Before you don't cuss that song a long time, but that one time you're grateful. Yeah,
grateful. And you guys are best friends in that moment. Monday comes, you don't even know each other again. You're like, okay, yeah.
Right, moving on to the Lord have mercy. That is entertaining me way too much. You two taking it there. Look, taking it next level. But very serious now. We're getting very serious now. Very serious.
Let's go deeper.
I want to go deeper. I want to also this whole. So we've talked about the power dynamics. We've talked about the fact that unfortunately, this is the problem about the systems and the structures not geared up to support us. Mm-hmm. It's geared up to provide a very high threshold of burden of proof. It's a very high threshold. So where we're at now, because I know this for a fact, is within organisations at this particular moment in time, and after the death of George Floyd last year, what happened was a lot of Black people who had stayed silent to varying degrees. You know what I mean when I say this, but to varying degrees, right? Because we had been drinking the Kool-Aid of all these decades that says this ill treatment of us to varying degrees is to do with us. It's us. We're looking at it wrong. We're looking, right? Mm-hmm. And then because coronavirus means we're all at home, so we all see stuff. Then we see what happens on in the States. Then we see we've got our own issues here in the UK, as you both know. Leanne's in Germany, so the whole different ball game. But what happened was we all went, hang on a minute, no. Not everybody, but there was a no. So then it was like, I'm not going to accept this anymore. So let me go and raise either informally or formally these issues. And what happened, right? Because receipts is the HR, I'm not going to name these HR groups, but there's some very big HR groups, networks, social media network things. And what happened was you had a lot of these HR people going, all of a sudden, all of these Black people are using George Floyd's death as an excuse to come and make up issues about how racism is not even impacted them, about how they're not doing this and they're not getting that. And I just feel like, how do I respond to that when I know full well that they're lying? How do I respond to that when, we as a business try to deal with coronavirus? How do I respond to that when they ain't got no proof? I mean, I just feel like it's open season now to be using race as an issue. We've never had an issue with racism. So why are they all of a sudden? Right. So,
right.
Yeah.
I can keep going. I just need to, because my memory's not as great. So I got to dig deeper in here. So you got all of this, you've got organizations, and I have in my mind, a maturity model, right? Where organizations are. Level 4 are the ones over here, level 1, compliance and risk, right? Mm-hmm. So what you have is if you're in a business that's risk averse and it's very compliance focused, it means that unless they can nail something and they can guarantee the outcome is not going to get them into hot water, they're not going to have these sorts of conversations. They are not going to talk about power dynamics. They're not going to talk about control. Mm-hmm. They're not going to talk about rank and privilege. They are not even going to acknowledge race or racism. Mm-hmm. Right. So you've got an issue of leadership teams and HR people, DEI. To be honest, if you're a DEI person, a level 1 type organization ain't going to hire you because they won't be on they won't be thinking about inclusion. And as you go up, So if you're not even having this conversation, and this is where as Black people, we got to think a little bit smarter with where we go in organizations. If you are going to work in a level 1, as I call it, organization, compliance focus, doesn't really get with inclusion, don't want to talk about racism, don't want to talk about race or nothing else like that. Just understand what environment you are stepping into, because this is where there's got to be two. And I'm not saying everyone jack in their job and disappear tomorrow, but we've got to take some accountability. We have got to take some accountability.
We have to be realistic about the outcomes that we're expecting due to the environment that we're in. And to your point, Shireen, I think there's two types of companies. There's the company that you referenced in your level 1, but then there's the other type of company that is doing so much. They're part of the diversity project.
Oh yeah.
Right. They're part of the diversity project. They're throwing money at it. So, on the outside, you also believe that this is a company where you can sit in, you'll fit in, you have a chance to grow. There are, Black faces in particular positions, but once again, a lot of these companies want you to excuse it's not a nice phrase that I've coined, but whatever. They want you to vomit out or empty your spleen as to how you felt racism, yet still they provide no support for you to then channel that energy into anything. They're not providing you with coaching to say, hey, how do I navigate this situation? Because they're not even factoring in what your situation is. It's like, hey, this is what it is. We have bought the whole package, the whole kit and caboodle for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We bought it from McKinsey. There you go. It works. Be quiet, Black people. And those are the two kind of main types of companies that we, as you said, have to be a little bit responsible to saying, not everything is made equal. We know that racism is going to impact us in every single company we touch. The question is, to what extent? And is there a readiness within the company? Is there an agility within the company to not only want to make the changes, but want to make the changes before I need to go collect my pension?
But this is the thing. This is the thing, though.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, but this is the thing, is that there's not the willingness to make those changes. And this is where, for me, when I see organizations badging themselves or people badging themselves as anti-racist or as allies, I'm like, but the thing is, what does that mean? Because you have to be willing to go further than you're willing to go. Because
you're polite, right? You're being polite. When people say, you know what I say, right? I'm like this, what have you done?
Well, this is the next thing, though. Because when you talk about being anti-racist, it's like, that's cool. Okay, and now what? What have you done? And this is where it's my favorite word, receipts. Where are they? Because you need to show us what you've done. When someone said to me, I was talking to a client, and they said, "Oh, we want to talk about how we brand ourselves as an organization that is more." Like, it's not about branding, because you can put as many Black people as you want on your website. But actually, if they come into the organization and you're not doing something to support them, they're not going to trust you. That's also the problem with these policies, these processes, these procedures, is they don't instill trust. The amount of Black employees that I'm sure we've all spoken to that do not trust the place that they work.
Yes,
because when they go through a process, they already know that it's
the outcome. We know the outcome. And that's
Right.
So the point about that is when people say, oh yeah, but because you get the two sides of the conversation, right? Then they go, well, if they don't give us a chance, how can we prove differently, right? And my argument is, unless you can communicate, so forget me, because, I'm super cynical, because your barometer to convince me has got to be up here. But for everybody else, start to talk about what is it. So if for those organizations who feel like they're doing a great job, the ones that have badged themselves, I don't mean the ones that are doing the work, because this is not about perfection, but I mean the ones that have badged themselves.
Yes.
The DEI people that have badged themselves, right? All these people like, yeah, we're doing it. And, they're there, right? Here's my thing. Help everyone understand, communicate to your people and to everybody else influencing your sector. What are the systemic changes have you brought about since whenever? So if your time horizon is since the murder of George Floyd, whatever, I'm not like, as long as you're here, I'm not bothered when you got on the ship, on the boat. You know what I mean?
Right.
What have you done to systemically address that? I don't mean put up a poster that says, if you've been a victim of racism, call EAP.
No.
I don't mean recommunicate the grievance policy.
Yeah.
I don't mean recommunicate, these are our values and this is what we stand by.
We stand by all communities,
Yeah.
black, white, black, but sorry.
It doesn't matter. How are you unpicking? You don't need to have an answer. And this is the other thing. People are like, oh my God, you don't need to have an answer. But we need to see that I keep going back to this. When you understand what racism is, you will not be in a position to start conversations like this playing devil's advocate. You wouldn't be in a position trying to argue intent over impact.
Yeah. Right.
You wouldn't be in a position of working really hard or getting stumped because the black person can't give you as much evidence as you need to have the conversation. I am not in this context, because I know, there's that really tweet saying, when black people tell their stories, believe them. I'm not getting into all of that because that's not what this is about.
No.
This is about the systemic stuff.
Yeah.
And this is about, okay, so now that I understand about the balance of power and control, now that I understand the impact of what being minoritized means from a social psychological perspective, in terms of we are showing deference to power because we recognize we don't have any in corporate context, that impacts our behavior. So when somebody says, I don't know who it was, but somebody said, oh well, Christian Cooper or whatever his name was, he didn't want to do anything, so we should respect his wishes, right? But when you understand how black people have been conditioned over the last 400 years, right?
We won't say.
We're not going to.
Yeah.
No.
We're not going to. So when you say that, that's a cop out for going, and as an employee who doesn't want to take up the fight, because listen, if there is a receptionist and the chief marketing officer, he or she has done whatever it is, how can you sit there and say, well, we tried to get her to go and put it in writing, but she didn't want to, and you accept it. And if you accept it, it means it's convenient and it's comfortable.
It should be convenient. That's exactly what it is.
It is, because it's too much blood, sweat, and tears to do anything more that requires humanizing black people or the global majority, because fundamentally we are still viewed as chattel / workhorses. You don't have feelings, get on with it, it's the way it is. And until they start to actually properly humanize us and see us as people who have feelings, and it's not just saying, hey, my life's like this because I'm black, but actually, as to Shireen's point, understanding what racism really is, understanding how power is enforced upon us, not something that we participate in, but is forced upon us, that dictates the journey, that dictates the decisions we feel we can make. Because if we want to make a career, yes, people talk about having to play the game. That's one part of it. But when you're black, you have to play the game, first of all, carefully. That's the privilege that we don't have. We always have to calculate, think back and decide, well, hey, if I do this, what are my chances of being able to stay at this company? If I say that because such and such and such is in this position, what will happen? Because having conversations with black women in large corporates, and you ask them, well, how do you feel about it? The first thing you actually have to reiterate is the conversation that you and I are having is confidential.
Yeah.
I won't. And what do they always say to you? Or what have they said to me? It's so nice talking to a black woman about this. Because to your point, Kit, the lack of trust is once you give this information to somebody who is not black, you are always in a position of, do I know what they are going to use with this? Do I know what they're going to do with this information? Will it be used against me?
The thing is, the answer to that question, in our experience, is yes. We don't even have to ask it anymore. So we have seen. I mean, Amy Cooper is an example, right? We've seen that there is this process of weaponization that happens, whether it's in a park or in a work context, to defend their position. So we know at some point is going to be, he or she brought this thing up, or they brought it up in the really in the wrong way, all of this kind of stuff. But all of a sudden, it's not about my experience and my complaint or my grievance in the same way that it would be if it was someone else. It's about how I've done it. It's about why I've done it. It's about why I didn't choose an alternative route. And it's like, but why am I now in the hot seat for this? I've come
Right.
to help. And this is why I was talking to a CEO the other day, and I said, this is one of the things that organizations need to understand. You need to start advocating on our behalves, because your processes and your policies have meant that my voice isn't heard. So you need to now start doing the work. You need to start unpicking this stuff so that actually, if I previously wasn't able to voice my concern, my grievance, you now need to make it clear and safe that I can. And you need to make it clear and safe for, well, expected that these HR people are who are chief people officers are actually going to deal with it in the same way that they would if it was any other situation. And I don't expect, and a lot of Black employees don't expect it.
No, but I think at the same time, now this is not to say that every Black person working in the anti-racism and anti-racism or DEI space is really in it for the right reasons, but there is something that a lot of these companies have to look at once again in terms of perpetuating our voices being smothered by this massive influx of white, Asian, a lot of other groups who are campaigning on our behalf but still aren't putting us at the forefront of our concerns.
Yes, I think there's a difference between so just in case I didn't get that across, campaigning on our behalves. I mean advocating.
They did, yeah.
Advocating and taking action, because
Jen,
I can't do that, because I tried to do that. I tried to go through the proper channels, and I was actually shown through the action of your organization that doesn't work, that's not going to work. So now what I need you to do is to make it happen on my behalf. You need to make it happen on my behalf. I don't need you to tell me that you value me. I need you to show
do it.
You've changed your processes. It's actually that simple, because everything else is chat. We've been listening to this talk for a very long time, so we know what the words sound like. We know the song goes.
We can tell them better than they can tell us. They can tell us what they're going to say next. We can predict it. And it's the other part about stop hiding behind the anonymity of the word company. Leadership knows who the problem are. They know the problem people. So when you say you're going to take care of it for me, go and take care of it with that person. Don't give me a theoretical grand plan of all these things when you and I both know it's one person who's the problem here, or maybe a group of people. Because as you said, you want to see the impact. You don't want to hear about it. Show me what you're made of. Show me how you're going to embed this into your strategy going forward. Because what people seem to forget is this isn't something that's just everyone's Black is trending, but we aren't a trend. We are Black every day, every night. It might be a trend in music, but we're not a trend. Yeah. So just as the same as they have, their growth outlooks over a 3 to 5 year cycle, they have their investment outlooks over a 3 to 5